call on Keith Brown, the final speaker in the open debate.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I start by just agreeing with the first part of Pam Gozo's speech when she mentioned colourful heritage and the contribution, very often not acknowledged, of the Indian Army, the British Indian Army at the time, especially the Second World War. I visited each one of the graves at King Yusuf, plus there's 2 others at Dornoch, I think, and also the makeshift mosque in Lairg, where over 300 soldiers were accommodated in that tiny little village in the Highlands during the Second World War. I'm delighted to take part in the debate. I've done 1 or 2 of these debates in the past, and I've not really had the opportunity, because of the role that I had at the time, to say some more, as many members have done in the past, about the personal history. I mention this because at the last Veterans debate that I spoke in as Minister, it was actually one where you cannot easily get a deputy or somebody to stand in your place for that debate, and I could not therefore go to my uncle's funeral, my Uncle Robert in Brora. And it struck me at the time that he had served 9 years in the Royal Navy, had served many years after that in the British listening stations up the north east coast in Scotland, but also that each of his brothers and his sister had also served in the armed forces, usually in the Navy, or in 2 brothers' case during the national service in the army. And also their father, my grandfather, who is on a war memorial in Pitlochry. He served with the Black Watch in the First World War. And also I thought, well, the same is true for my mother's side of the family as well. She had a number of brothers, one of whom retired as a major from the army. He was then murdered in Pennycook when he was overseeing the transition of wages to pay the soldiers after he had retired, but he was helping out in that regard. And 2 other brothers who went to Queen Victoria School in Dunblane, my constituency, which was at that time, as it is now, for the offspring of members of the armed forces. And it's just to point out that, of course, members of the armed forces and veterans are of us. They are part of the families and the wider society that we all inhabit. Just a couple of other very quick points. First of all, I'm glad the Minister mentioned the medal replacement scheme. I think it's useful if we can get as much publicity for that as possible. The Scottish Government can't replace medals, of course, but what it can do is when the MOD does agree to replace a medal, it can stand for the cost of replacing that medal if it's required to do so, and I know that's been very welcome. Also, in relation to the physical and mental needs of veterans, that's been mentioned. Could I just mention Rock to Recovery, a small charity, and although many people, Alec Riley and others, have called on additional support from the NHS, I would not want to see undervalued the support that's provided by people who themselves are veterans to other veterans. Rock to Recovery is a peer-to-peer service and is very valuable for that reason. And I would encourage the Scottish Government to continue to engage with Rock to Recovery to see how they can help in relation to veterans needing that service. And also in my own area to Wee County veterans who do a fantastic job for veterans in Clackmannanshire. In relation to housing, which was mentioned by Edward Mountain, in fact, Edward Mountain mentioned when he left the forces and he got, I think he said, £500 and a resettlement course, and things have got much better since then. Well, I can tell him that I got neither £500, nor a resettlement course, nor a pension when I left the armed forces. So things have improved a little bit in the meantime. Also, I would say that in relation to Willie Rennie's points, and I disagree with his point about how he would try to address the issue of education, much of what the Scottish Government has to do has to respond to what the MOD does. And he made a point about the fact that people can be shifted between different billets. And more recently, 5 or 6 years ago, there was a situation in Scotland of a family who'd been moved from Germany to Edinburgh to Belfast. 3 different postings with their family in the space of 18 months. And it's the public authorities that have got to try and address that kind of challenge. And I think we do it very well in Scotland. In fact, I think there's a great deal that has been done in Scotland which is worthy of some more comment. The Scottish Veterans Fund, we've heard it mentioned, the census, the development there. The dedicated Minister for Veterans, which I think started under the former First Minister in 2008, and it reached a golden period where you had a Minister in the Cabinet. And I think the Minister should use that as his gambit to try and get into the Cabinet, to say we should have a ministerial level appointment in the Cabinet. But it does show the attention that's been paid to that, and I think that's a real success. And I've also been aware of the way things have changed. I remember saying in 2011-12 that what we had to do was try and address disadvantage rather than provide advantage. It was actually quite a contentious thing to say at that time. But now it seems to be the language everyone's using, and it's none the worse for that. So I think Scotland does do a great deal which is worthy of commendation. Of course, there will always be more to do. I should say in relation to Christine Graham and Maggie Chapman, I am not a pacifist. I do think it's essential that we do have armed forces and that they're well trained and well looked after. And also I would say that in relation to this debate, and too many like it, people veer away by and large from any contention, any kind of political back and forth, and I think that patronises rather than promotes the interests of veterans. They're not people that have to be mollycoddled. They can understand political differences, and I don't think we should shy away from that. And I think in relation to some of the differences, I would say that Edward Mountain mentioned he thought the budget for the Veterans Fund was too small and we should take it away from overseas trips. I don't know whether that would include the trip I made, the 2 trips I made to the Falklands on the government's ticket. I would say, if we are going to be contentious, why not have illegal wars and pay instead the money required for proper boots, proper helicopter support, proper tanks for our forces? I think also you could avoid things like handing out P45s to service personnel on active service in Afghanistan. I mean, think about what's really important to veterans in these circumstances. And also in relation to Megan Gallagher, I don't support her proposal. I don't think we should marginalise what I think is an abominable thing to do to deface a war memorial. I think we should take it away from the general remit of the law. And the last thing I'll say, on a note of consensus, is that the point that Edward Mountain made about housing is really important, and I think he identified, which I've done in the past, where the MOD has estates in Scotland, which are no longer using Craigie Hall. It's got hundreds of houses literally on it, but there's other sites as well. If the Parliament could come together to get a spearhead, and Edward Mountain will know the significance of that word, spearhead, if we could spearhead a campaign to get the MOD to convert that into veterans or housing available for veterans, it may require selling some off and bringing others up to standard, but it's perfectly possible we could make a big difference to the housing situation for veterans if the Parliament was able to come together and do that. But in conclusion, I would say I'm very grateful that the Parliament has once again recorded its support and the admiration both for veterans, because of the service they've had, and the contribution they continue to make to society.
Thank you.